Why is it that Chinese athletes competing in the Olympics seem to have been unfairly targeted by doping agencies in the run up to the Games? It's a topic that's been making waves, not just in the sports world, but also in the broader geopolitical landscape. How the US has been targeting or seemingly targeting Chinese and other athletes seemingly unfairly. Now, this isn't just about sports, it's part of a larger historical pattern of political maneuvering and power struggles. So, first off, let's talk about what's been happening with Chinese athletes. Now, recently, the Olympic champion Zhang Yufei spoke out about the unfair treatment that Chinese swimmers seemingly have been facing. And it doesn't seem to be just a few isolated incidents, more of a systematic effort to tarnish their reputations. In the lead up to the Paris Olympics, every athlete on the Chinese swimming team was tested around 20 to 30 times. Now, that's an average of 3 to 4 tests per person per week. Now, don't get me wrong, obviously, doping tests are essential to keeping sports clean because that's what we all want, right? Fair games. But the sheer number of tests these athletes underwent is absolutely staggering, especially compared to the other competitors, and of course raises questions about the motives behind them. And just a few weeks before the Paris Olympics started, the FBI and the Department of Justice launched a criminal investigation involving 23 Chinese swimmers. Now, these athletes who had already proven themselves by winning gold medals at the Tokyo Olympics were suddenly under scrutiny for alleged doping. The timing of this investigation could not be more suspicious. It seemed, at least to me, like a deliberate attempt to unsettle the athletes, get in their heads, and cast a shadow over any and all achievements. Now, this is reminiscent of the broader geopolitical tension between the US and China. The US has been vocal about China's economic practices, military expansion, and technological advancements, as we all know. It's almost as if the sports arena has become just another front in this ongoing rivalry, with the US now trying to undermine Chinese success on a global sporting stage. So, what seems to be the aim of these practices by the US? Well, it certainly seems like the US are unfairly targeting their competitors in order to gain an unfair psychological advantage, or at least perhaps to lay the groundwork to then be able to tarnish a potential Chinese win. Imagine training your whole life for this big moment on the world stage, only to have your integrity and hard work questioned constantly. Now, the psychological toll must be absolutely immense. For Chinese athletes, the constant doping tests are not just a physical inconvenience, but also a mental strain. It creates an environment of distrust and pressure where athletes are always on edge, worried about the next test or the next allegation. This stress obviously significantly impacts their performance, as they are forced to deal with these off the field issues rather than being able to focus solely on their training and their preparation and indeed the competition. So, the ongoing scrutiny and the possibility of being banned or stripped of medals must be demoralizing. It's hard to stay motivated and perform at your best when you feel like the whole world is against you and every one of your achievements is met with suspicion. These tactics do seem to mirror the broader geopolitical strategies used by the US in other competitive arenas, like trade. By destabilizing key players or companies and creating an atmosphere of uncertainty, the US seeks to maintain its own dominance and influence. Now, this is just what it looks like to me. But it's not even like the US has a spotless record themselves in this area. In fact, it was the US who were the first to develop a performance enhancing anabolic steroid in the 60s. Now, the relationship between the United States and performance enhancing drugs for sports didn't stop just there, with at least 18 Olympic medals being stripped from the country so far. In fact, the US has been responsible for some of the most high-profile instances of cheating at sports on the world stage by means of doping. Just think about it. Lance Armstrong, who was seemingly revered by the whole world until it turned out he was a cheat. Or Tyson Gay, who was stripped of his medals in the 2012 London Olympics. These guys are, of course, Americans. And it's not just individual athletes or in the Olympic Games themselves. The US has had its share of doping scandals involving entire teams and sports organizations, like the Balco scandal of 2003, involving a laboratory supplying performance-enhancing drugs to so many people, so many athletes, so many sports teams, using undetectable steroids. A federal investigation exposed widespread doping practices in American sports, which led to multiple indictments and convictions. Despite these scandals, the US has often managed to escape the kind of blanket punishment on athletes or sports people and international scrutiny that it has pushed for other countries, like, for example, Russia. So this seems to raise questions about double standards and whether the US is perhaps using its global influence to protect its own, whilst targeting others that may or may not be doing the same thing. Is this a double standard that we see in other areas of geopolitics as well? Do the US criticize other countries for their policies whilst turning a blind eye to similar issues perhaps that are occurring at home? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Another interesting tactic that shows America's influence on international sports is the way that they've perhaps tried to change or alter slightly how Olympic success is actually measured. Traditionally, countries were ranked by the number of gold medals won, but recently the US media has started emphasizing the total medal count, which includes gold, silver, and bronze altogether. Add them all up, whoever has the most medals is the winner. But why the change? Well, it just so happens that the US often tops the total medal count, even if another country, like China, wins more golds, which I believe we saw at the Beijing Olympics. By shifting the focus to total medals won, the narrative changes, making it seem like the US is always the top performer. This change might seem minor or not important, but it's a clever way to maintain a perception of dominance and success, and it's just another example of how the US uses its influence to shape the narrative. In conclusion, the targeting of Chinese and, of course, Russian athletes by the US is a complex issue with deep political and cultural roots. It's not just about sports, it's about influence, power, and control. The constant scrutiny, unfair allegations, and shifting narratives seem to seek to create an uneven playing field that affects the lives and careers of many talented athletes. Athletes that, of course, would rather stay away from politics and just concentrate on their performances. As fans and supporters of sports, we should advocate for fair play and unbiased treatment for all athletes, regardless of their nationality. And in my opinion, sports should be about celebrating talent, hard work, and dedication, not about political agendas. So, it's truly a shame to see the Olympic Games be treated like this and pan out the way it has. Subscribe to the channel and let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think the US is being unfair to Chinese and Russian athletes? Or is this justified? Thanks for watching.